Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's 6 o'clock. I apologize. Our solicitor got stuck in traffic. He should be here any minute, so we will start as soon as he walks in. He walked in.
I waited for that.
Why is my computer going, huh?
That's unusual.
I know there's something going on. Really? Oh, that's been on.
Yeah. Yeah, I've copies.
Okay, I love my iPhone. That's wonderful.
I just switched back to iPhone.
We'll talk tomorrow.
I have the mixture.
That's good.
I need sequence on it. No, I need some sequence on it. I got the moon on
Okay. All right. Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. You weren't late anyway. All right. Can we please stand for the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have a roll recorded?
Mr. Buscemi?
Here.
Mr. Fano?
Here.
Mrs. Leonard Ellison? Mr. Monahan?
Here.
Mr. Obi? Ms. Price?
Here.
Mr. Ryder?
Present.
Mr. Vanderberg?
Here.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Here. All right. All right. The purpose of this meeting is to present the 2014-2015 preliminary budget and for any other business that is properly presented. At this time, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment regarding agenda-only items? No one. All right. We're going to move to number 4, budget presentation, Mr. Simonetta.
Okay, well, there's really not a presentation for this evening. Last meeting, the board authorized us to put together a preliminary budget, which is attached for approval to forward to the Department of Ed. That budget will now total $137,991,000. That's going to represent less staff reduction that we had previously presented, around 36 staffing reductions. But this, it's put together in order to forward it to the state. It has to be a balanced budget, so that's why the current budget that's attached reflects those reductions. It also reflects an additional increase in taxes up to a total of 4.9%. So what we're looking for tonight is approval of this preliminary budget, setting the real estate tax rate, so with the exceptions, at 58.10. And I'll open it up for questions.
You mentioned the fact that even if we go above the cap, and that's obviously what we're voting on, we're still looking at this point in time, 30-plus staff reductions?
Correct. For approximately, right now, we're looking at 36. Now, again, as we said last week, this is the starting point. As we're getting into the budget in more detail, we're hoping that that number can be reduced.
There's been a lot of talk media-wise lately about the numbers of funds coming into education increasing
for the 14-15 school year. Has any of that been taken into effect, or do we know anything about what may potentially be coming?
We did receive a minor increase in the basic education fund,
Okay.
$40,000. That's already reflected, $50,000. We do have word that the block grant, in the governor's budget, we could possibly receive an additional $1 million. That is not reflected because, again, that's his budget and it's not approved yet. So
Right.
I'm not going to put together anything that's going to count on that. But that would be a great start if we could get that and reduce that deficit by $1 million.
I suspect that money, though, is earmarked for special, it will be earmarked for special programs.
A lot of it has to do with the preliminary guidelines on that. Some of the curriculum we're already doing. We currently fortunate enough to receive a block grant of $500,000, which we use in the general budget. So at this point, based on the parameters that I've seen, we could probably use that money as well, an additional $1 million.
When will we know that?
I guess as soon as legislature passes the budget. What's that, May?
May, June, 2 years from now.
So, Mike, when you said that the real estate at 58.10, can you just clearly state what that number is tax-wise?
That represents a 4.9% increase. And I think at the last meeting, I think it's for the average home of 60,000 assessment, it represented an increase, a total increase of about $159.
And as it pertains to programs and things like that, a 4.9% increase from 2.7 would go from a possible loss of 56 down to 33. 36.
And it goes from an $88 increase on a $60,000 home to $159.
What was that again? 88 to what?
At 2.7, it would have been an $88 increase. At 4.9, it's a $159 increase. Now understand, so we're all clear, this meeting, if this preliminary budget is approved, allows us to apply for those exceptions. Not guaranteed, but the formula that we did that's on the website, it appears that we would qualify for that. And again, as we're getting through the process, it will be up to the board as we go through if we're going to use all of it or not.
So, Mr. Simonetta, the resolution that we have tonight is, it's either a yes or no vote. If it's yes, we're going above. In the preliminary, we're going up to 4.9. If it's a no, we're staying under.
Well, at this point, if it's defeated, if this preliminary budget is defeated, by default, we would not be able to go above 2.7, the index. Is that correct?
Well,
Mr.
the likelihood is, once again, the legislature is to be thanked for its random acts. The law doesn't really say what happens, but as a practical matter, it's likely that unless we have an affirmative vote, because the law talks about adopting a preliminary budget. It doesn't really say what happens or what's necessary to adopt a preliminary budget. To adopt a final budget, you need 5 votes under Section 508. But there's a substantial risk that if we don't have a majority vote, it only needs a majority of those present and voting, doesn't need a majority of everyone, but I think we have, what do we have, 8 here, so it still need 5 votes. There'd be a substantial risk that the exceptions would be disallowed if we don't have a majority vote in favor of the resolution. Can't say with absolute certainty, but I'd say substantial likelihood.
7.
I'm sorry, what?
7.
7, okay, so you need 4. You need 4 votes. You need 4 votes to pass.
But if this resolution, if this preliminary budget is not passed, is the resolution required for me to apply for exceptions?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that given, once again, I thank the legislature for its uncertainty and confusion, otherwise I wouldn't have a job. But I have to say that, that if you read everything in context, the likelihood is that they would disallow the exceptions. But can't say that with certainty because the law doesn't speak to that with certainty. It says you're supposed to adopt a preliminary budget. It doesn't say what adopt means, but I think that that's a substantial risk. If it doesn't pass, can you still submit it? Yeah, I think you can still submit it, but whether or not the department would recognize it, I can't say. I think it would be a substantial risk that it would not.
Are there any further questions before there's a vote?
I'd just like to make a comment. You know, we're looking at, like you said, from $88 to $159 a year, basically, for the increase in taxes, right?
On the average.
Now, you break that down to a weekly figure, okay? It puts it more in perspective. You're looking at it, if we go to the 4.9, somebody would be paying $1.37 a week more than if we stayed at the 2.7. At the 4.9, you're looking at $3.06 a week in taxes. At the 88, or at the 2.7, you're looking at, excuse me, $1.69 in taxes a week. So the difference is $1.37, okay? And we got to put that in perspective with what that $1.37 is going to buy in terms of an education and in terms of programs, because it just seems like such a trivial amount. You know, not to make trivial of it, but is it worth cutting things that we need and can't recover? Okay, or is it better to throw that in there now in the hopes that we can find some other outside-the-box ways to pick up some more money? And by outside-the-box ways, I'm talking about healthcare costs and other things that we really have to look into. You know, what else can we do? You know, can we talk to the teachers? Can we talk to suppliers and try to get different prices and wages? Because at this stage here, we're just driving ourselves into a hole, but we're not, it doesn't look like it's going to stop. So I would just like to take that into consideration. $1.37 is the difference on what it would take to keep the additional 20 teachers. How many teachers?
Not 20.
Would that keep the music program? Would the additional keep the music program? Mike?
It's somewhat hard to predict that right now because we're so early in the stages of, you know, how the cuts are going to trickle down into the staff. But I would suspect that the answer to that would be yes. Certainly, we're not looking to make that cut in our programming easily and quickly. So.
Without that money, it's possible, more possible that it would go?
Yes. Yes, we would have far fewer opportunities to pick and choose without that, no question.
And Mike, you use 60,000 because that is the average assessment in the school district?
According to the county, yes.
Mr. Spinetta. Mr. Buscemi, one of our newer board members brought up talking to other vendors and supplies and things. Would you mind, just for everybody, because maybe other people weren't following us last year or the year before, and for all the new members and to refresh the old members' minds, could you just give a little update on things such as those little things that we have done in the last 2 years, or what we've looked at and what we've changed, just so the public has an understanding of what we have already looked at and the board?
Well, a lot of it, and I think I mentioned earlier, in the last two budgets, we probably cut around $5 million out of those other account areas. We've gone to cooperative purchasing and bidding everywhere we can. We use the state purchasing system, which are already vetted vendors, so the prices are what we hope to be the lowest, and even then, we check those prices to make sure, to confirm. So we've done a lot in the purchasing area. We're in a co-op with the IU, for a lot of services with fuel and purchases and supplies. So we've done a lot of that. And if you recall, one of my charts was that all other area, which includes, a couple $1 million for charter schools. But there's only $10 million out of $134 million to play with, where we really have some choices, or those types of choices that you're talking about.
And like part of the things that got us into trouble here ends up being the amount of pension funds, the increase in that. And if you just take the increase in the pension, how many teachers does that translate into?
Well, $3 million, and if you're, let's say, a staff average salary is 85, even if you want to round off at 90 with benefits and pension, say $100,000, that's 32 teachers right there. If it were, I think the number I had was $3.2 million for a pension increase. So if you just want to round numbers, so 30 to 32.
And we were over 2 million then, because we looked at a $5 million we're chasing. And part of that was obviously the pension at 3.2, but we're also looking at teacher increases of over 2 million
Well,
as
yeah,
well,
and that
correct?
was district-wide increases. The
Yeah,
salary
yeah.
increases for next year are 2.2 or 2.4 million. So right there, and then we're hoping that we only need additional $500,000 for medical benefits. And again, that's, looking at our pattern, I feel comfortable with that, or else I would put it in. But right there is almost the entire increase in the budget, just those three areas.
If you take a look at what the board and the administration has cut back on over the past number of years, I think a lot of credit has to be given to both and to the teaching staff as well, for being able to maintain reasonable class sizes in just about every area of the school district. What you find now this year is that the discretionary spending that was examined and cut before is gone. There's nothing left, and now we're looking at the loss of jobs, and that clearly is going to impact, as we've seen and as predicted, on class sizes. So the difference between our circumstances this year and previous years is significant in terms of the impact that this is going to have overall on our students. There's no question about it.
Well, has anyone approached the teachers to see if there's something that we could do with them in terms of maybe modifying something to?
Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, I reached out to the teachers, and they're willing to come and sit with us. Unfortunately, we had some bad weather, so what was supposed to take place 2 weeks ago is now taking place Thursday. So we're maybe not. Hopefully, you're right. I forgot. We have another storm coming. But hopefully we can get a meeting, and if Thursday is snowed out, we do it as soon as possible. I know this is, I believe, the first time they're bringing. I was told the entire rep council.
Well, we've had several informal meetings with the Teachers Association so far this year, which has been, I think each one was very positive. Quite honestly, we reached out and said we'd be interested in talking. It was a way for me to become familiar with their leadership, and they were very receptive. The most recent one, again, I think there was a very strong interest on their part, as well as, I said that, I'm not a board member and I'm not a negotiator, but I said I do believe that we're all in this together, and that the board would view their willingness to talk and discuss things very positively. So we have this next one set up very soon. So I think that's positive.
I think it's positive as well, due to the fact that the EPFED situation, where the Teachers
Yes.
Association decided
Yes.
to step up to the plate and say, hey, we're going to take a percentage cut. Now, I realize that was only $90+ thousand, and that's not in the millions of dollars the last time I checked mathematically. However, that is a step in the right direction, and they did make, obviously, I think, a very good professional gesture in order to support kids. So I think that's positive, and I'm hoping, looking down the line, that there are other things that are positive that can happen.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Mr. Ryder. There's no question that the Teachers Association helped to save the whole realm of school activities and athletics and music activities and so forth through their willingness to talk and discuss and vote on adjusting of the salaries for those extra duties. And that was a very bright spot in this year so far, because they enabled our students to continue in the activities that they were looking forward to and getting engaged in, and I know that that was well received by everybody.
But I just think that if we can, work something out with them, I mean, it would not just be look favorable to the board, look favorable to the whole community. And really, to me, the teachers' salaries aren't the problem. There's a sleight of hand going on here, and the teachers are being made the villains in this show. Somebody making $60,000 is resenting the teacher for making $80,000. Somebody making $40,000 is resenting the guy making $60,000. We can go all the way down to $20,000 a year. In the meantime, you've got these guys over here pulling the strings. They're fracking everything out of the ground for free, just about. They're cutting their education funding, and they're pointing at the people who are doing the job and taking the least money for it as the culprits. And I think somehow we have to come together as a board, a union, and a community and go after these politicians to get these funds for our kids. They can't keep, they're pushing the buck to us. We look like the bad guys because we're going to have to hit somebody for an extra $37 a week now, because Governor Corbett decided to cut money so he can give his fracking buddy a little break, So these are things. These are things that we really need to take seriously, work with the teachers on, and hopefully we can come together as a team, work out some of these problems, and go after the people that are causing this dilemma.
Come Thursday, Friday morning, we'll have even more good things to talk about.
Any time for communities to ask questions, right?
Just asking if there's time to ask questions.
Oh, yeah, we do have a time. We just passed one where it was public, I asked for public comment for agenda items, but we'll come up with another one in a couple minutes. Or a couple hours, depending on how things go. But it will come. I'm glad we had, does anybody else have any questions? I'm glad we brought up and we were able to go back and discuss what has been done. I think that's important. I think just to educate the new board members, the old ones that forgot, and, the community. A question I get a lot is, your central administration is just too top-heavy in central administration. And I think I think the new board members may know, and they may not know, and the public may know and may not know, but that's our top-heavy central administration over there. There was 17 2 years ago, and
There's 5.
not even close to 17 anymore. They're doing the work of what 16 or 17 did. So, we've been all over, and we've been digging for everything, trying to find ways to save and turn the thing around. So
That was very informative.
You weren't aware?
Not that much, no. Not that much.
Mr. President, I do have...
Very creative, too.
One more question, if you will. I do have one question. For Mr. Simonetta, if you, and I hate to pick your brain on the spot, but if you can speak to the number of teachers that we had in 13-14, not 13-14, 12-13, in comparison to the number of teachers we have for 13-14 and some of those obligations that we talked about a little while ago?
I think I have something that it'll be easier than picking my brain. We currently have For 13-14, I think we have approximately 604 staff members.
Okay.
The previous year, that was 625.
Okay.
The year before that, that was 705.
And
It's a constant reduction.
and what is the matching funding expenditure for those years? How much were our obligations that are so increasing?
What was the pension?
Pensions and all of that stuff.
It's really difficult
Is it?
to put that down, but I can certainly do some research and put that together for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, real easy, it's between the pensions and the salary increases, I mean, under the resources that we have, which is 2.1, 2.4, whatever the index is, there's just no way that can match it can't match the increasing cost just for the pensions, which been going up at least 4% every year.
So is it safe to assume that that we're seeing increasing obligations parallel to a reduction in staff? Is that safe to say?
Sure.
Okay.
Increasing expectations as well. You know what I'm saying? At a time, that illustrates what the true dilemma that schools like ours face at a time when expectations and scrutiny and comparison to schools is increasing and becoming quite the discussion, public discussion. Schools like ours have had to cut back on the supports that we initially had in place, and that obviously limits our ability to impact on the scores and the achievement levels of kids. It's a negative relationship, and it's extremely frustrating because we've had conversations recently about achievement levels and the painful realities that we have in front of us every day with students who have glaring needs, and our ability to really address those, our ability is compromised tremendously every year now because we have fewer and fewer people to help out. And, as I said before, it could be said, well, maybe the way that the money was spent 5 years ago, and we used this money to do that, it could be. It could be a lot of things. One very simple thing, the reality of this economy today, as compared to the economy of 7 or 8 years ago, is pretty glaringly different and not in a positive direction. We've had a governor who has openly cut back funding levels to 2008, I believe, if that's correct. So, those two factors alone would be enough to challenge any well-run, highly organized entity, whether it's a business organization or public school. Those two things alone, those funding those problems. And we now have a myriad of other issues that confront us and confound us with this. So I think you're absolutely on the right track. If you look at 705 teachers 3 or 4 years ago compared to 654 now, and with the potential of losing another 30 to 50, we've lost over 100 teachers in the span of 3 or 4 years. That's devastating. It's just devastating. Because our product walks and talks. Our product, it's not a thing. It's, a human being that walks and talks and has desires and interests of doing well in school and achieving. And it's extremely painful.
Mr. Vandenberg, were you asking about the ratio of how much we had to put in? So I think we've seen the numbers before where 2 years ago it was 8.6 and now we're up to 17%. Is that what it is? Is that what you were talking about?
Not exactly. More or less a direct parallel to the given school years with the number of professional staff members or teachers in comparison to the number of obligations that we have compared to where we stand now. For example, taking a look at, 12, 13, for example, how many teachers did we have? What were our obligations? Comparing that to 13, 14, how many teachers do we have? What are our obligations? That's more along the lines of what I was looking for.
Well, just to the point I guess I was getting towards, if you look at 2012, our contribution rate was 8.65. This year it's 16.93. So in 2 years, that's a 95% increase.
And next year
it goes up.
21.4.
So it'll be up over 100% in 3 years. And our tax rate has gone up 2%?
3.7,
Yeah.
2. And again, just the revenue generated by going to index is under $2 million. And these costs are going up just for the pension, $3 million.
Yeah.
It's what I like, a simple math. It doesn't work.
Thank you, John.
Let's get back to some more simple math. Fund balance. It's rather simplistic because we've been drawing down on that a little bit. I think it's important for you to explain that maybe an additional time, because we have looked at, within this budget structure, to take some more dollars from the fund balance. And where are we at with that, and what was the projected desire, initial projected desire that we wanted to?
Well, the budget you have in front of you is asking for $1 million out of fund balance. We originally came out with requesting $750, which was the amount that was coming out for this year.
Yes.
But with looking at the cuts, at some point, we felt as an administration, we'll ask for another $250 from the board to try to balance this budget.
Mike, you're saying $1 million from fund balance?
Is in
With
the
the
current...
4.9?
With the 4.9.
Or the 2.7, or whichever
Either
would be, or
way.
anything in between.
Right.
Right.
We're still looking at that
Right.
$1 million
The first one
fund
was
balance.
2.7 with 750.
Right.
This
Yes.
one is 4.9 with 1 million.
With 1 million. Right. And when we talk 56 cuts, 36 cuts, 2749, at that point, I changed everything to $1 million out of surplus to balance the budget. So if anything
And where does
changes-
that leave us then, Mike?
Well, it'll leave us in the, and we're taking it out of that assigned surplus, which
Right,
was
assigned.
a little, almost 13 million 2-3 years ago. That will leave us at about 11 million.
Taking $1 million out.
Yeah, because last year, we were able to, with better spending, or good spending practices, more reliable estimates on revenue, on tax collections, we were able to underspend and not go into it as much as we had anticipated. We're hoping again that for this year.
Right.
So we're looking at probably about 11 million of the unassigned. 3 years ago, that was 13 plus. Now, the assigned. The unassigned is 2.7 million.
Question, and I forgot, I know you said this, I don't think tonight, but you said it before. What's the difference in revenue to the district between 2.7 and 4.9?
About another 1.7, I think I said 1.728. That number came back.
So if we went with the 2.7, we'd essentially have to pull 2.7 out of the fund balance to come together.
Yes. Or talk about that number 56 again.
Right, 56 units, right. Or, but if you went at 2.7, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, I'm just trying to understand, 2.7 out of the fund balance, you're at 36 teachers.
Right. 2.7 million out of the fund balance at 2.7% tax increase.
There's 33 teachers.
36
The
teachers.
2.7
36.
is covering the 4.9.
The difference.
Any other questions for Mike? Comments?
One more question for the solicitor. Mr. Freund, just one more piece of correction. A yes goes to 4.9, a no goes to 2.7.
Yes, effectively, it's true.
Okay.
The yes goes to 2.7.
No, I think a yes goes to 4.9.
But you don't have to do 4.9.
Up to.
That's what I wanted to.
Or how you make a motion.
Does it have to?
If the motion passes, then there's a possibility of going to 4.9. The exception is granted. If the motion fails, then the likelihood is that we'll not be able to pursue our exceptions. And
Will be effectively limited to 2.7?
Mr. President, I just want to clarify one more time. No. Because there's, approving that motion, don't forget, especially for the new board members, that doesn't mean in May or June, when we do the final budget, we're going to be at 4.9. That's still going to be up to you to make your decision from there if you want to, or as we go along through the process, to not use all of the exception. Right.
Still an optional basis if we go to 4.9 at this point.
Just want to make it clear that this doesn't mean you're locked in at a 5% tax increase.
And just for the board, because our solicitor wasn't in the microphone for the majority of his comment, a yes vote means we can go to 4.9. A yes vote on this. A no vote means we stay below, at or below 2.7. All right, everybody got that? Any other questions? Seeing none.
yeah, get a motion for a second.
I need a motion to adopt the resolution.
Motion.
Second? Second. Discussion? I don't know if they might have more. All right. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call. I knew that was going to be.
Mr. Buscemi?
Yes.
Mr. Fano?
No.
Mrs. Leonard Ellison?
No.
Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
No.
Mr. Vanderberg?
Yes.
Mr. Pittavant?
We got to do it again.
4-4. Motion failed.
The motion is,
Motion to re-accept the, is that in order?
And a second.
Second.
Motion to what?
Motion to re-accept the motion? Or do it over?
currently the motion failed. We're not going above 4.9.
Is it failed or is it at a
Mr.
tie?
Vandenberg wants to make a motion to reopen it from again.
Well, it would have to be somebody who voted no.
That's right.
Someone who voted no has to make the motion to retract. Otherwise, we'll just go over 4-4.
Well, excuse me, sir. In about another 2.5 minutes, you'll be able to speak. But thanks for raising your hand. You just yell out. Thank you. Is there anyone who just voted no who would like to do it again?
Who would like to keep it at an optional basis to go to 4.9?
I just don't understand why we want to lock ourselves into a lower figure when we're not saying we're going to raise it to 4.9. We're just saying we have the option.
For me, I can only speak for me. I don't want to give false hope to anybody. I have no desire to raise the tax above 2.7, and I strongly believe we can work together and not see 56 teachers cut and not have to raise taxes above 2.7. And like you said, it's going to take all of us. And it hasn't been an all of us effort. And I think this year we have a chance to be all of us. And I'm I could say yes today, I have no intention of going above the index. So, I have no intention of voting above 2.7 come time. So I just don't feel it's appropriate for me, if my intentions are not to do that, to raise false hopes and have people think that, there's a potential that I'll go above. That's just
Who are the people that you're afraid is going to understand that? I mean,
Say it again?
who are the people that you are concerned about giving a false hope to?
Well, I'm sure if the vote goes, people are going to start to feel there's a chance it's going to go to 4.9, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. If this vote ends up in June the way it was today, I'm a no vote.
Well, my point is that, and I think we might as well be upfront, we're going to be talking with the teachers. The teachers are the key to this.
I
okay?
agree.
I don't think limiting to try to scare somebody into doing something is going to help us. My feeling is we want to be upfront, honest, we need their help. If we have to go to over 2.7 to save some things and they're willing to help us, we might do that. We lock ourselves in at 2.7 and you take that away. I mean, I don't think any of us would be happy going to 4.9. But when you're looking at, we haven't talked with anyone yet, and we're limiting our options before we even get to the table, it just seems foolish. It just seems like we're taking something away from ourselves.
Can I speak?
Please.
I understand where you're coming from, absolutely, and I voted no. And I think that with Mr. Pintabone and the others that voted no, there's a concern here that there's a perception that we're not willing to raise taxes. We're saying that taxes could be raised to 2.7, which is a significant amount for most people in this community. To go above that is asking the taxpayers to pay up a lot more than what they probably, in most cases, can even afford to do. A lot of them are barely keeping their homes. Many people are losing jobs, losing income, staying the same. We're not saying we're not going to increase taxes, but to say that we would be willing to go above the 2.7 at the expense of the taxpayers is being unfair to the taxpayers. We're saying that we need everyone to work together. There is that possibility that if everyone works together, possibly things won't have to be cut to the extent that we've been talking about. But to give us that false hope that we're going to ask the taxpayers to pay even more so that we won't have to, you're now asking the taxpayers to do that. And I think that we need to recognize that as we move forward. We're already asking the taxpayers potentially to pay a cap of 2.7.
Right. And I understand what you're saying. But if somebody's going to lose their home over $1.37 a week, we've got one foot out the door already.
But that isn't their only...
No, I didn't. Please let me finish.
Okay.
The education opportunity that we're going to deny someone for $1.37 a week, to me, is immoral. And I don't think it's just that we don't want to raise the taxes on the taxpayers. I can't help but think that we're trying to hold a hammer over the teacher's head to do something, and I don't think we have to do that. I think they're intelligent enough to know that they've seen we hit the wall. I think when the talks come to them, if we're up front with them and don't go in there trying to intimidate, we're going to get a lot more. Now, the 2.7 and the 4.9, you're talking $1.37. To me, I don't want to pay more taxes either. I don't want to pay the extra $88 a year. Okay, I can find some use for that. But if I got to go without a bagel for a week, to put that $1.37 in there so some kid isn't going to come and rob my house because he can't find a job in 20 years, I'll do that.
Thank you. But your perception, excuse me, please, we're just trying to have a constructive conversation here. I think that we're looking at your statement saying that we're not willing to look at possibly raising taxes, and that's not what anyone here is saying. We are all recognizing that we're in financial straits. We all are. And the assumption that we're giving up a bagel is a little bit insulting, because we're not recognizing that in this economy, there's a lot of expenses that are going up. And a bagel isn't part of the picture. But to compare to that extent, that simplistic extent, is insulting.
How is that insulting?
It's insulting because it's not about that. It's not about a bagel a week. It's about the fact that people have increased costs in healthcare. People are having, taxpayers, when I say people, taxpayers are having increased costs in the food that they go to the grocery store and buy. It's not just about a bagel a week. It's about a lot of increases across the board, and we're going to be asking them to pay more. I think we're giving them a false perception in the public when we say that we might potentially be willing to go above the cap. I think right now, with the economic times the way they are, there's a cap here for a reason, and I think we should be respectful of that cap, because we are representing the taxpayers. We're representing them in trying to negotiate good education for our students, appropriate education for our students. And we're trying to do that in a fair way. So we've been sitting at this table for the last 6 years, trying to struggle through how are we going to do this. And we've gone through reams of cuts, and we all are acknowledging that right now. So everyone's been trying. We continue to try, but to say that we're willing to go and just put more burden on a taxpayer above and beyond a cap, I think is unfair. It's misrepresenting what we, on the other hand, are saying that we want to do, not impact the taxpayer, but have quality education.
You're not going to get both, Carrie, not in this economy.
Yeah,
And
you
I
know
think
what?
that's pretty
If everybody
simplistic.
works together, we're in this game together. We are, whether we want to face it or not. We're in this game together.
Well, how is limiting what we can do taking away our ability to work together? I don't understand that.
Are you willing then? You're saying that you are willing to vote for a budget that's going to go to 4.9.
If that would save enough teachers to give a kid a good education, I probably would do that, yes. I'll be right up front with you. You know, this tax stuff, you know, and one of the things that really frustrates me about this whole dog and pony show is the fact that the politicians are putting a squeeze on everybody. They're trying to do away with the teachers' union. Okay, they're trying to do away with all unions. And the way to do it is get the working people to start fighting among themselves, which is exactly what's happening. The teachers don't want the bus drivers are mad at the teachers, this guy's mad because he's making more. It's all happening. Well, people are picking our pockets in these other places, and we're not educating our kids to be smart enough to see it. That's what they want. They want stupid kids. They want to dumb down this society. If we let them do that, shame on us. If we let them do it for $1.37, double shame on us.
When you say they, just so that I get clarification, who are the they that you're referring to that want to get rid of unions and that want, you know, you're saying they, but you're not identifying.
Governor Corbett would love to see the union go. Governor Corbett, yes.
But we're not Governor
Corbett. A lot of Tea Party
Corbett.
Republicans, a lot of Democrats, a lot of the politicians that depend on our votes to get into office are doing things that are hurting us, are taking things away from us to give to their friends. But we're too stupid to see it because we're watching American Idol. We're watching the football game. Okay, we don't see that. But in the meantime, our kids are getting dumbed down. And the more dumbed down they get, the easier these guys are going to have to play what they want with them. I see people from all over the world come in. I work at PennDOT. You see the people come in from China, India. These people are smart. They're not worried about money for education. They're educated people. We could do the same thing, and we used to do the same thing, until these people got the plan to pull that rug out from under us. And if we let them do it, then shame on us. I'm not for it. I'm not going to vote to limit what we can put into a kid's education. I'm sorry.
If I may jump in and add in, I think that one of the bigger pictures that we're looking at here, and we're all elected to this office. We were all put in by the public. Somebody voted for us to be sitting at this table. And to be sitting at this table, we've got a lot of things to put on the table to consider. That being respect to the taxpayer, respect to the student, respect to those who are looking at us as leaders, from within the district. And it's just baffling to me how we're essentially going to let $1.37 come between, what we're trying to portray as a quality education. I don't think that it is something challengeable that the more we decrease the professional staff and the more that we decrease the funds that go into the buildings, it's going to decrease the quality of education, if it has not already. With going to the 4.9 or having the option to go to the 4.9, let's be very clear that we are not saying that we're going to put out a 4.9% budget. I believe that Mr. Pinnabone and Ms. Ellison both said that they believe that we can reach an agreement at a 2.7 number. Well, I hate to be a naysayer, but what if we can't? It's an honest question. Having that 4.9 open, I think, is the answer to the very question that I asked. We're not saying there's going to be a 4.9% budget, and I understand not wanting to, quote-unquote, give a false hope. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's go to the 4.9, and if we can keep it at 2.7, let's do it.
I agree with that. I think that we need to have the flexibility. I don't want to go raise the taxes that much either, but at least we could have to go above the 2.7 to maybe 3.0. We could do it.
We can be in the middle. Let's compromise. We'll have that option.
That's just an option. Flexibility.
Well, and again, I'll reiterate that 2.7 is an increase.
Yes.
So let's all recognize that.
Yes.
And the way I look at it is, yes, 2.7 is an increase, and like Mr. Buscemi said, I don't want my taxes to go up either, but, I was once told there are two things certain in life, death and taxes, right? I don't understand how we can know that we have, let's be honest, a terrible situation in front of us. Say we know that we've got multiple options, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to limit ourselves up front. What I fear is that we may get to a point where we say, okay, yeah, we're going to do the 2.7, but let's take more than $1 million out of the fund balance. And let's say it's $2 million, just to use a number, not saying it will be. Well, then we got to refund that down the road. So all we're doing is pushing the problem down the road later to either ourselves or others. And I don't think that's any wiser than stopping at 2.7. I think it's bad. Quite honestly, we need to give ourselves that room to at least look at all options the entire time we're going through this process.
And I appreciate that, but recognize that going above and going to the 5.9 is pushing the problem on the taxpayers.
I understand that.
Just so we all are clear.
I understand that. I'm a taxpayer also.
I'm not saying that you're not. Obviously, we all are taxpayers, or we wouldn't be sitting in our seat.
Right.
I would add, though, we are putting an extra burden on the taxpayer. I'm not going to argue that, Chair. Fact of the matter is, what's worse? The burden on the taxpayer or robbing a child of an education? What's worse?
I'm not looking at robbing a child of an education. What
When
I'm
you take
looking
the
at is
teachers
that
away,
we're
you're
all
robbing
in this
them.
game together, and my hope is that we will all participate in finding a solution to a horrific problem.
My hope is that we have world peace, but the fact of the matter is,
Well-
I would like to keep my option open rather than go to just 2 countries and say, well, let's maybe talk to 5, just maybe talk to 5.
My other question is, where's the negotiating power if we cap it at 2.7? Okay, 2.7, let's call a spade a spade. It looks like doomsday to some people, a 2.7 with 56 cuts. Where's your negotiating power? What room do you have to negotiate if you cap at 2.7 when there's already a slashing of 56 at that point. There's no room to talk. There's no room to discuss. When we go to the it's 2.7 or lower. And, you know, nobody wants to be that person. We're sitting here as elected office holders. Nobody wants to be that person to vote for a tax increase. Nobody does. Now, I don't think any of the 9 that sit on this board want to continually vote for tax increases. But if we're talking about the negotiating and the working together and the camaraderie that we're going to have, where is that buying power if we cap at 2.7? It's just a open-ended question. I'd love to hear if somebody had an answer.
You'd like to hear, I'm sorry?
I said I'd love to hear if somebody had an answer.
About where's the negotiating going?
Well, where's the room to move? You know? That's okay, I'll wait.
That's executive session. You don't have to wait for a while.
Mike, I have a question. 13-14, we're down to 600 teachers. Our cap last year was 2.1, if I recall. 2.1, 2.2, what? 2.4. 12-13, looks like we had 625 teachers. Does anybody recall that cap?
2.1.
2.1. If we go back to 11-12, we're at...
But we only went, or, last year was 2.4, was the cap. The last two caps were 2.4 and 2.1. Both years we went 1.7 with tax increase.
No, the first year we went 2.0. The second year we went 1.7. That's correct.
That's correct. 1.7.
Mr. Fadum? Correct?
I believe you're correct.
I'm sorry.
So our cap's now been basically around 2 over the last 3 years. And over the last 3 years, essentially, we've cut 105 teachers. So if we go to the 2.7, which is, yes, a tax increase, I understand that perfectly. I hate this. We're looking at the possibility of 50 additional teachers.
30 to 50, is that what you said?
So
56 at 2.7.
So then in the last 4 years, we've then tarnished the educational world with about 150 cuts in
Mr. Ryder, if I
educational
may,
quality.
the fact-
And we've been staying right around that 2.1, 2.0, 2.4, and then we whittle it down to 1.7, which is great. But we're still kicking the can down the road, and we're still in a situation where we're not getting ahead. And I'm not sure based on pension, based on contracts, that if you go to the 2.7 up to the 4.9 and say, okay, we have this opportunity to negotiate dollars and cents, or are we still kicking the can down the road? And that concerns me, because that's essentially what we've done, because we've been strapped with contracts that are unsustainable. That's part of the problem. And based on that, when we're trying to look at, well, we'd really love to commit at a 0 millage increase, because, boy, that would be a thing to do, not raise anybody's taxes. That's not going to happen. We obviously understand that. And then pension increases go up, so thank you, Governor. And we're between the proverbial rock and a hard spot, and I don't want to give that hope of saying, okay, if we open that up from 2.7 to 4.9, where are we going to end up? We don't know that. How much negotiation do we have to do? How much consolidation do we have to do? How much time and effort do we have to put with the teachers and contracts of other areas of concentration? Realistically, that's the only contract that's now available, because essentially we've settled everything else this last year. I'm willing to look here and say I'll change my vote to a yes, but I can... No, please don't do that. I don't need that. I don't need the bureaucracy, please. But the reality of it is, we have to really then focus.
If last year we looked at, okay, 2.4 and we came in at 1.7, then obviously if we're going to look at 2.7 to 4.9, then damn it, we really need to work together. And I will not vote for a 4.9. There's no way I'm going to say, well, oh, we have a breath of fresh air. We're going to take it, and we're going to, I guess, bleed everybody, including myself, because I do pay taxes. It's the rock and the hard spot. It's public education at its finest. Great support by the politicians of the world. And yes, maybe we'll get something, but that would be after the fact, because our budget has to be approved before the budget of the state has to be approved, and we have no idea on a yearly basis what we're getting from our governor, which is really a great way to think about it, isn't it? We put the cart before the horse. That something's wrong with that. But I'm willing to change to a yes, because I guess at this point in time, we need the flexibility. I don't like that flexibility because it's dollars and cents that we're asking taxpayers to pay. But I think there's a realization that somewhere along the line, being in education for 35 and a half years, if there was anything I had to promote on a daily basis, it was kids. And it kills me to raise taxes. I don't want to do it, but the reality of it is, I think we educate kids. And if we continue to cut another 50, 30 plus teachers, are we really educating kids? We've had debates on this board over the last several years about class size. And we can twist class size any way we want to. Good, bad, and different, because there's that group of people that say, God, you have to have the small class sizes because it's more productive for A, B, C, D, and E, and F. And then there's that other side that says, you know what? Kids will learn, they're flexible, we've got great teachers, they can be the Bob Shrivers of the world, and they can work with 25 kids or 35 kids. It doesn't make any difference because they're quality teachers. So we can get in that fight back and forth all we want. But when I come back to reality, I have to think of kids, and I have to think of that flexibility, and I'm willing to change to a yes because of that flexibility, but I'm going to hold people accountable. We all should be held accountable as board members, as administrators, as central administrators, as principals, as teachers. One of the things that I've been impressed with is that a lot of people email me, and the technology has never been my strong suit, but I do read emails. I don't like to respond to emails because I don't want to be on the front page of any paper. But the reality of it is a lot of people have a lot of concerns about cutting whatever. And I think we all do as board members have that same concern. I don't want to see more teachers go by the wayside. Yes, our teachers make a great salary. Believe me, they do. From an average salary, I'm sure it's in the mid to high 70s. And I'm probably not wrong on that. And that's a pretty nice buck for a teacher. But as a former principal, as a former educator, I'm sure the vast majority of teachers work for that dollar and cents. There's no doubt in my mind. I like the fact that they did do some concessions with EPFED, extra pay for extra duty, and I'm hoping they step up to the table again because that would be a great, great support for our kids. So I'm willing to take that gamble, and to me it shouldn't be a gamble, but I just don't like the fact that, God, last year we fought over the zero budget, and this year we're going to look at exceptions. I hope exceptions are not a rule around here.
Mr. Ryder, hearing you, I'm going to make a motion to reopen the vote. Is there a second?
Second.
It's kind of stupid to ask now, but any discussion? I had to follow the process. Any
Let's just
discussion?
double check and be clear that a yes.
A yes is above up to 4.9.
No, the yes reopens.
Oh, yeah, we're just
Oh,
reopening.
yes reopens,
And
okay.
then we'll need a motion.
To do it again.
On the substantive,
On the resolution.
on the substantive resolution.
All right, so, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No, that's just one now. All right, can I have a motion for preliminary adoption of 2014-2015 budget resolution?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All I'll say is, if we could please hold the applauses and the backflips. And the second thing I'll say is, I promise I will not raise taxes in June to anywhere near 4.9%. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Two oppositions. Bob and Carrie. Now let's move on. Personnel. Can I have a motion?
So moved with regrets.
Can I have a second?
Second.
With regret? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 7, miscellaneous. We're going to revise the 2013-2014 school calendar.
Move.
We have to make up some days due to the snow. Huh? Oh, you made the motion? I'm sorry.
Second.
Second, I didn't hear you. Discussion?
Well, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Got more days.
Opposed? None.
None.
Number 8. Now, please, so nobody gets hurt, take your time. There's a lot of people ready to go. Public comment, non-agenda items. Now, you've been, you've been trying to talk to me the whole time. I just need you to come to the podium, sign in, and speak
Non-agenda
out.
being not the discussion that we were talking
That
about
was
earlier.
nothing that's on this agenda that we just worked on. What were you talking about? What you want to
I
talk
wanted to
about?
ask questions about the whole budget process. So. You mind?
Yep. Just please sign in and then state your name.
He was very patient.
Are you back?
Good evening, Eddie Lozano. I'm a resident of Palmer Township. I have a 7-year-old boy in Tracy, 2 other children who hopefully will be going to Tracy, 5 and 3 years old. I'm a newbie to this process, so I apologize. I've been out of the loop in terms of the budget issues. But for what it's worth, being an independent business person, I kind of feel that this process is a fire drill every year. And I'm not pointing fingers when I make that comment. I just think it's structurally, it seems like the nature of the beast here. And I first learned about this budget issue about a month ago. And when I saw the issues that you're facing, they seem pretty draconian. It's not like, hey, we're going to lay off 1 extra teacher that we didn't plan for. You're talking about 40 people that you're going to cut. The impact on the students is significant. You're going to potentially close down a school, move a building, sell a building. This is just what I'm reading, so again, I apologize if I don't have the facts correct. And this is probably in the midst of a year. So either A, things weren't planned or forecasted very well, or B, we're getting blindsided. And if this is going to affect our children's education, I think parents should be a little bit more engaged and informed because, I'm glad I made this meeting to learn of the magnitude of the issues, but I shouldn't just have to wake up out of bed one day and find out that, there's going to be 35 kids in my kid's class from 28. He's not going to be able to take music lessons. His sports programs are going to be cut. And, the school district is going bankrupt. Shame on me for not being as engaged, but I would just ask this group to communicate a little better through the PTAs, et cetera, so that citizens that want to be informed and want to, convey a position or help in the process can do so. Secondly, one thing that would be helpful is as you engage with the community, and especially like a person like myself, I would love to understand the facts better. I'm a facts guy. I'm not an emotional guy. I try to stay away from the tangents. And I'd like to understand what the facts portray in terms of the budgets from last year to this year to the next 5 years. I commend whoever stepped up and said, hey, we need to take a look at a longer-term plan and try to resolve this as opposed to fire drill, kick the can down the road, and have the same issue the following year. I also, I really appreciate your comment of trying to take this elephant and breaking it into bite-sized chunks, because I, for one, and it sounds like there's a few people here, and I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else but myself, I'm happy to pay $500 or more a year in taxes if it means that our kids are going to get the right education. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that and say that. I'm sure there's other people here that want that as well. So I would ask you, don't arbitrarily put caps on, the budget that you would allocate to our children's education for the sake of making a number. Now, listen, I'm a conservative guy. I don't want to pay more taxes like anybody else. But if you tell me it's going to cost me $1 a day to prevent 50 teachers from being laid off, which is not going to help our economy, is it? Secondly, my kids are going to get a reasonably good education. I mean, what kind of decision is that? That's a no-brainer, right? And what I would tell you beyond that is, what's helpful for me, and I hope for others, is that please present what is optimal. You're the representatives and the professionals and the experts in terms of education. What I need to know, and you guys were talking about a little bit, is what is the optimal model for an ideal educational system? Put a pencil to paper, cut the fat. We don't want, over expenditures, waste, etc. But by the same token, I don't want to cut things that maybe we can afford. Again, I'm willing to step up and pay more if it's reasonable, if it's effective, if it's going to give my kids a good education. And then let's put a long-term business plan together so that you don't have these fire drills every year. Because, it just sounds like, this school district is on the border of being bankrupt in the next few years if it keeps going the way it's going. And I don't want that. You don't want that. My point is, if you can, I think, present, the issues a little bit more factually so that the community can understand a little better. B is have a long-term plan so that you don't have a fire drill type of situation. C, don't make assumptions, because, again, I don't want to pay more taxes, but, if it costs a bagel a day to ensure that my kid gets a good education, sign me up, and I'll buy 2 bagels, okay? So, thank you.
Thank you. So, if I could I like the fact that you came today. You're a new person that came out, and I appreciate it. And just to answer some of your comments, when we have these meetings, everything gets put up, it has been put up, where everything's broken down and what's causing what. So you will see that here. PTA reps are here every meeting, so they have the information. We have some information online. So the information's out there, it's just people have to be willing to want to go get it.
Frank, I think another thing, too, is they're also televised, right, aren't they? You can watch them on the computer.
Stream,
If you can't make it.
And you can watch all these meetings live, and then go back and a week from now watch it again. So.
Hi, my name's Marissa McFadden. I'm a mom of 5 kids. 2 of them attend March Elementary School, and 3 are going to be there very soon. I've also worked with the March PTA and other community members. I was here on the 28th to present a petition that we had gained about 900 signatures for. Now we have about 1,200 signatures, and I'm here tonight to just kind of reiterate the purpose of that petition, which was simply to find a way to stave off the teacher and staff cuts, but also to offer a hand. Let me pause and mention, I teach argumentative writing and thinking for a living to 18-year-olds, and today we were talking about underlying assumptions and anticipating counter-arguments and objections from your audience, and I think the preparation that I did today with some kids in a classroom is kind of important here. I don't speak on behalf of these 1,200 people thinking that you guys did nothing ever and that you just spun your wheels and chit-chatted. And I don't speak to any of you thinking that you weren't willing to listen to us from the start. I think all of those things were always there and always will be there. But I do think that there is a need for us to come together as a community and a real deep desire for the community to join hands with you. One of the things we had outlined in that petition was the idea of a joint task force where maybe community members could come in, business members, stakeholders, parents, people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and do the real research, and really take the time to understand these mind-boggling numbers and situations that we're faced with, and to work with you. A lot of what I anticipate you thinking or saying is, we've done that. We've had a task force. We've tried certain things. We've gone through everything. You can't possibly imagine how long we've agonized over these numbers and the choices that we're faced with. Standing on our side, I think it's hard to say, okay, fair enough, and let you do your job without us asking again to maybe hold hands and give us the opportunity as citizens to be there with you and to bring people in who can work with you and understand the process that's going on as a task force. And so some of the things that I wrote down, I'm just going to read really quickly because I can feel myself going on a tangent. Without a plan, and one that involves strong and strategic community partnership, there really is no way to move forward for us with any sense of hope or optimism, because we all know there are only a few ways this can pan out. And while you might believe that a joint task force between the board and members of the community will only go over the same old ground that you and the administration have covered, I and the nearly 1,200 signers of the petition believe that it's time to try again, and this time as a team. The way things are supposed to work and the way we've gone about affecting change, we're in a system that's broken, and it feels presently like we're putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. Right now, as one of those signers of the petition, I'm asking you on behalf of the rest to find alternatives that involve us, that involve this joint task force. While we know each of you has done your share to overturn proverbial stones to find hidden cost-cutting and revenue-generating gems, it's time to try again, but this time work with the people who have the biggest stake in the district flourishing, and that's us, and that's the community members, that's the business leaders of the city. I'll close just by imploring you to reach out to us. We're willing to roll up our sleeves, and there are people who have tremendous strengths and a lot of time. And I am a mom of 5 kids. I don't have a lot of time. I wrote this at 4:30 before I came in, and I've spent half my weekends working on stuff to try to understand it and digest it. I work, I don't have a babysitter, my husband works, he travels. If I can find time to try to wrap my head around the basics of this, and I think I did a good job to go beyond that, and I'm willing, I know there's others out there, and we're willing to sit down and want to be a part of this process in a more visible and official way, and I hope that maybe you would consider that. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yes.
From after speak, I'm sorry, did you want to clap? Go ahead, Claire. I spoke to our solicitor, and I was going to bring it up later, but since you're here, I'll bring it up now. I have gotten a lot of emails from community members who want to sit down and with us in the back and work things out. I don't think that's possible, because how do we pick what people? And people are going to be left out, and there's some things that we're not allowed to discuss with the public.
Certainly.
So what we were thinking is, and I'm going to put the board members on the spot, somebody's going to have to raise their hand and step up. But I was thinking that you already have 1,200 people, like a list of 12, you have numbers. Maybe we can set up a liaison, a board member, to where you have budget, you have copies of the budget, they're online, you can print them, you can download them. You guys can work together, come up with something, bring it to your liaison, which will come back to us, and we'll work back and forth that way. I think that wouldn't be a bad thing, but
I understand that we can't be present for things like contractual talks, and there's no need for us to be present there. The idea is that and I'm sure you guys have already looked at all the different ways that we can pull in money, that we can cut costs, but I think it's worth looking at again, and that's the kind of stuff that we're asking to maybe sit down at the table and have real.
But and I don't say you're wrong. My only issue is, you know how big that table's going to have to be.
Well,
and the reason I say that is, if I say you come sit at the table, everybody in the back is going to say, why not me? So we have public meetings when you have an opportunity to talk and to come in, and everybody can get involved. But if you want to put a coalition together, name it something, and you'll work directly with a board member, and we'll send it back, and we'll go through everything we can. I mean, we're not going to just ignore it. I don't know if you've ever emailed us, but anybody that emails anybody on the board always gets responses. We get back to them, we do what we can do. So I think moving forward, that's a positive step, and I think we can go about it that way.
It still feels kind of divisive and kept out of the circle, and the idea is, again, not to be involved in talks that we don't have a place in, but to ask you guys to be involved in our talks and to come to sit with us. The task force wouldn't necessarily be 8,000 people standing knocking on the door, say, let us in. It would be people who are specifically positioned to serve in certain roles. We've come up with pillars, we've come up with certain things to investigate. We handed this out last time, but some of this was based on meetings that we've previously had. But people who might be able to sit in on one of these pillars and have leadership experience or backgrounds that could help guide a conversation. And in those conversations, then you could walk back and have your executive meetings and say, this is something that, we discussed. It's not really asking you to let us to your table, but it's asking you to come to our table or a central table where we can all really work together. And I'm, again, certain you've tried this before, but I think that the atmosphere is different and the dynamic has drastically changed.
I think the liaison idea would work.
Well, I'm really not sure what the difference is. They can have their meetings, and we can send representatives to those meetings, as long as there's not more than a quorum.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to have a meeting, email us dates and times and locations.
Okay.
And if a board member's available and they, like to be there as a liaison, if you will, to hear what your group has to say and what they're bringing, they'll bring it back. Same thing.
Okay.
But at least now, I guess now it'll be in person if you have a location that you want to meet.
We can definitely make that happen.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Now, and I'm talking board, because we don't have the authority to tell
Correct.
somebody after hours to go, but a board member.
And this
if
is
they're
who it's
available.
directed to. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let me just ask, with the liaison, my idea of a liaison would be just to go, hear the group, and maybe structure some issues that we could bring back to the board. Maybe a couple people from the group could come and present those issues who've researched them and really delved into them. And that way, the liaison would be more or less just a liaison, a go-between, to set up the times and coordinate the people who need to be there. I'd be happy to be a liaison.
Does anybody have any objections to Mr. Buscemi being the liaison? Even if you don't like his tie.
Get ready for Advent.
Okay, so, ma'am,
Ms. McFadden?
if you can please connect with Mr. Buscemi, get his email address, and you guys can set it up.
Thank you for your time.
You got it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eliza Feltmo. I'm a resident of College Hill. I have 2 students in March Elementary right now. And I'm just sort of speaking off the cuff tonight in regards to the assumption that people don't want to pay more taxes for better education. I was here at the last meeting where there was probably 150 people here, and when you guys voted to go to up to 4.9, not necessarily go to 4.9, I recall, and I couldn't believe it, people applauded. Taxpayers applauded a tax hike for better education. And if that doesn't speak volumes to the wrong assumptions that many politicians make about tax hikes, I don't know what else does. And there was a large swath of people here last time. They were from every part of Easton. We're not just talking about the people who can necessarily afford the $1.37 a week. We're talking about the people who might not be able to, but they'll find a way to pay it, to have a better education. We can't just make assumptions that were clearly devalued at the last meeting. And there are people here throughout this whole meeting, and I know you guys don't like it, but we were applauding when you wanted to increase taxes. You can't ignore the fact that the people that you represent are sitting in the room with you applauding that. And I applaud you for taking the risk, because I know as politicians, you're voted in here and you make the assumption that we don't want our taxes increased. But you know what? Stepping up to the plate and making the hard decisions are why we voted you in. No one wants their taxes increased, but it's the way it has to be right now. Is it always going to be this way? Possibly not, but it's a way to at least start the process. So I also want to thank you for hearing Mrs. McFadden. I've helped her work on the pillars that she was talking about, and I think it's wonderful that Mr. Buscemi is stepping up to be the liaison, and anybody else who wants to be a liaison too, because there's 4 pillars, we could do 4 liaisons, that would also be awesome. And that is all I have to say. Thank you. Yes?
I talk too much, but I like to engage so we're all on the same page.
Please, I like it.
When people come and speak and say, raise my taxes, because I could have 2 bagels or something.
No, oh, well.
And if we say no, or we vote no, it's not because we're ignoring the people, but there's a large district, and we have a lot of constituents, and a lot of them, unfortunately, don't like to come out and speak. So as we hear you, we also, pretty much all of us, also have a huge full inbox with 100+ messages saying, don't raise my taxes, I can't afford it. So sometimes it's not that we're ignoring you, but we're trying to balance it out for all the groups, because as we do hear from you loud and clear, we also hear tons of other things loud and clear from tons of other people. So don't think we're ignoring you or just not paying attention.
Right.
It's, there's just, it's coming from all angles, and we have to make the right decision.
There's one other point that I forgot to make, and then, I say I'm on College Hill, and that is sort of like a bougie kind of place to live. I have been on multiple really tight budgets where I have had to go to the government for help. And even in those moments, I would have still, I would be representing the bottom half of the economy, and I would have still wanted my taxes increased if it made sure that my daughter knew how to read, my son could add and subtract. So, I've seen both ends of the spectrum in terms of financial situations, and so I'm not just speaking from someone who has a decent income and can afford that. I'm speaking as someone who, it would be a hardship, but I'm willing to do it. So, thank you.
And we don't think you're bougie for living on College Hill. I hope one day I can live on College Hill. Sorry, man. I do. I hope to be up there, too. Would they like to have me in College Hill?
Hi, my name's Victoria Santos. I'm 12 years old, and as class president of EAMS 5-6, I speak on behalf of the students at my school. Walking around the hallways of EAMS, you hear a lot. What someone has for lunch, where they're going after school, what Susie said about Sally. But some things that I've heard about countless times are the proposed budget cuts. When I imagine how my fellow students would react to these problems, I imagine shock, but that's it, since it is so difficult to get involved in a arduous situation such as this one. I was completely wrong. My friends were outraged, knowing that our educational experience would be greatly impacted. There are so many important aspects that make EASD what it is today, an enjoyable and safe learning environment. The kids that walk around our schools are being pushed to their limits, taught and trained to do their best, and given new skills and things that they love or will help them later in life. Cutting music, art, and certain sports, laying off teachers, making class sizes bigger, and shutting down an elementary school is not a reasonable solution. Music is proven to enhance your intelligence level and is an essential part in one's life. Art is a substantial factor to a child's ability to be creative and self-expressive. Sports provide a great amount of exercise, which is necessary for good health. It teaches children about camaraderie and the power of working together. Laying off teachers and making class sizes larger will lessen the ability to work one-on-one with students. From my past and current experience, I've learned that teachers have to run clubs, take care of classes, and do their own work all by themselves because there already isn't enough help available from other teachers. For example, my incredible enrichment teachers, Mrs. Rawhut, who I have currently, and Mrs. Simon, my elementary enrichment teacher. I cannot express my gratitude towards these outstanding teachers who I can safely say have instilled in me the confidence and knowledge I have today. Just when we are about to add more to our school, double of that is taken away from us. Little things that are eliminated from schools are being able to affect students and teachers in many ways, so imagine what such major cuts will do to this district. A quote I read says, "The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you," by B.B. King. If these cuts go through, our beautiful learning experience will be greatly diminished.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Corradino, and I'm a resident of Palmer Township. And this morning, I actually sent the Board of Education an email, and I'm here tonight to offer you a solution, which may at first seem wildly unpopular, but I think this is something that could actually work for our school district and could help our budget crisis without affecting our class sizes. What I'm here to talk to you about tonight is the option of year-round school. Now, as a northerner, and as in a room full of northerners, you hear that and you think all-year school. That's not what year-round school is. My husband and I had the pleasure of living in Raleigh, North Carolina for 7 years and having our oldest son as part of the Wake County Public School District. And he was in year-round school. What does this mean? Year-round school allows for 25% more students per building because there is a 4-track system. There are only 3 tracks in at any one time while the other track is on vacation. This works out to an approximate 9-week on, 3-week off schedule. Now, traditionally, you would have a teacher for every class, for every track. Our crisis now is that we may have to cut teachers. An elementary school is on the chopping block at the moment as part of discussion. If that were to happen, well, how is that going to solve anything? The other possibility is if you decided to go to a year-round school system, not for all of the elementary schools. You could do it for some. We have 7. It could maybe be 4 of them. Then you could call those schools, we could change them into charter schools. That gives us the option of not having teachers in a traditional teachers union. That gives the school board the option to negotiate those contracts, say now you're going to teach not for just your 180 days plus your in-service days, but you're going to teach all year fluidly through all the tracks in your grade level. So for example, for first grade, if you had 4 tracks, there's always 3 tracks on. If you have 3 teachers that work full-time and only have off national holidays like the rest of the world, then you are able to service 25% more students for the price of 3 teachers instead of 4. Now, yes, that would mean that those teachers would want a salary increase, but if they are not unionized, you have the option of working with their benefits, which could, in the long run, save you money. For the students, year-round school works out to be a wonderful thing. When you're on for 9 weeks and off for 3, you don't lose all of the things that most kids lose over the summer. You have a much higher rate of retention. That leads to overall higher grades. It leads to higher standardized test scores. For the teachers, it means less time reviewing, more time teaching curriculum. They get through more material. The kids don't get burned out. They're only in for 9 weeks, then they get a 3-week break. It gives families the option of taking off-season vacations instead of having to go in July and paying top dollar with everybody else. It gives the community at large an opportunity to create jobs. Suddenly, there is a need for daycare or day camps all year long. Suddenly, the Y has to say, hey, I need to create these programs because my parents knocking at my door wanting to pay for them so that my child has, their child has something to do for 3 weeks in February, not just in the summer. As a parent who's been part of the system, it's great. We missed it when we moved here. It was a fabulous experience to be part of a year-round district. It would also give the Easton Area School District something that other school districts don't have, and that's choice. If year-round school is attractive to you and you're looking to buy a home in this area, maybe you'll buy in Palmer Township instead of Nazareth. That means tax dollars. If this all works out to higher test scores, that means more money from the state. Sorry, I'm running out of time. So thank you is just an idea for you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ding, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm well.
You remember me?
Oh, yeah. It's the laptop that gives you away.
I promise I'll be nicer tonight. Good evening. My name is Curtis Ding. I'm a resident of Forks Township, parent of a fifth grader in the middle school, and husband to a furloughed teacher who's also a substitute in the district currently. As many of you remember, I was here at the last meeting. I'd like to start out. One item which I'd like clarification on. Mrs. Leonard Ellison, I've been on the board for 6 years. I would appreciate it when we're discussing the budget of our school, teaching our students here, paying for wonderful services. I would appreciate if you wouldn't refer to it as a horrific problem. This is not a problem. This is our school district. This is something of value to our students. This is something of value to the homeowners. This is something of value to people who may consider moving here or staying here. This is of value to our community. I don't see this as a problem. I see this as a challenge that we all have to collectively do together. But I actually, before you were saying you were offended at the concept of a bagel, I'm offended when you call it a horrific problem. So I would appreciate it, being that you're on the board so long, please discontinue referring to it in that manner. Now, I have a question for Mr. Simonetta. As far as the preliminary budget that has been put forward, the salary expenses, I noticed that there was some variation within that. Does the salary expenses that are in the current budget reflect the projected teacher cut as put forward as a possibility?
At 36.
So there's 36 cuts included in that.
In the budget that was approved tonight.
Okay, can you please answer if the projected benefits expense is reflective with the correct pension percentage, and if that's applied to last year's budgeted total salary expense or the new projected salary expense? Because I did some rough calculations, and it appears to me that you're off by about $575,000 on the current budget. Because if you do the calculations, the 21.31% is applied against last year's budgeted salary amounts.
Well, I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay.
I'd like to see what you have, and I certainly...
Yeah, it's...
Sit down and look at that.
that was a big number, that's why... Okay, very well, very well. Another item, because since you're talking about having everybody in the district partake in trying to help collectively and find solutions, as everybody knows, I've spent ridiculous amounts of time going through the public information that's currently on our website. However, everything that's on there is currently in a PDF format. I have spent countless hours hand keying in information, budget information, check register, all this information, trying to analyze and ascertain what's actually being spent. Would it be possible for the information to also be provided on the website in Excel format, so people might be a little more inclined to actually use this information and try to, do a couple of graphs, maybe do a couple calculations? And now I'm not saying just in Excel format. I'm saying in PDF format as well. So there's at least some kind of checks and balances there to ensure that somebody's not trying to manipulate the numbers. But at least it would give an opportunity for a lot more people to just download that information and use it on their own and come up with some different ideas. Now, with respect to that, as far as ideas, I do have some other ideas because I've gone through the check register for this year to date already, and I got to tell you, I've found some very interesting expenses in there that could probably be cut. Buy out home health care services for $28,000 year to date. That's home nursing services. When does our school district provide nursing services to somebody? I'm confused. Camp Huntington, that's a summer camp for $8,000. We're paying $85,000 so far year-to-date to other schools as far as Reading and Trenton Catholic for tuition expenses, and it says tuition expenses on the line items. Now, I understand, but because of No Child Left Behind, we may have to pay another school district to provide certain services that our district can't. But if we're already now spending $85,000 to other districts and other schools, why? So it doesn't make sense.
Mr. Ding, if I can stop you right there and let our superintendent, he can answer those 3 questions for you.
Okay.
Sure. When you look through our budget and you see those kinds of expenses, which you've pointed out are unusual expenses and perhaps not something that you'd expect to see, every one of those are related to a specific set of circumstances for special needs children, and or the circumstances surrounding perhaps a student who has been expelled and needs to attend a school in a different location. The district has an obligation to find services for all of our students, and oftentimes, we cannot do that. But by law, we have to provide for those needs, and so you will see often expenses associated with medical coverage and medical services, and we are indeed obligated to provide that service for students who attend our schools during the day who need medical services. So for every one of those, I can tell, I can't discuss those with you personally, but I can tell you that I understand what you've done there, and you've seen those. I can only tell you that is a fact of life in every school district in the United States of America anymore because of our opening the doors to all students.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
I realize my time is running, but I'd also just like to bring up a few other numbers. One of the concerns I have is, first of all, I want to clarify, I don't want taxes to go up, okay? I don't want taxes. I don't like taxes. I hate taxes. I'm an accountant by trade. I hate paying taxes, okay? When I was here at the last meeting, and even now, where I'm hoping to see the door open to go above the 2.7 if necessary, I don't even want to see it go to 2.7. If I may just have a few more moments. Thank you. I don't even want to see it go above the 2.7. I would prefer to see 0. However, I've pulled some information from the PSERS website, and this year, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Simonetta, the contribution rate for this current year is 16.93% for pension expense. Next year, it's 21.31. The following year, 25.8. The following year, 28.3, and then after that, 29.15. That's a 72% increase from this year through 2018. I ask anybody who said no on this board tonight, who insists that, 2.7 is an increase anyway, how do you propose to kick the can down the road? We have liabilities that we are going to incur no matter what. We have been told that our expenses are going to go up incrementally. This year alone, our pension expense exceeds the 2.7, if I remember correctly, or everything else staying flat. So considering that, I'm sorry if picking on you directly, Mrs. Leonard Ellison, but I sat before you about a year or so ago and watched you insist that you wouldn't vote for any increase above any increase at all. You would insist on voting for a 0 budget increase, but then yet you voted for a teacher's contract that just kicked the can down the road and gave them almost everything they had. It just froze it for that 1 year, so it gave a Band-Aid. How anybody can sit here and say that we are not going to have any tax increase? Are we now just going to strip every year? Let's cut another 50 teachers. Let's cut another 40 teachers. Let's cut another 60 teachers. Cut this program, cut that program. When does it stop? Okay, I don't want taxes to go up. We can find ways to do it, but for anybody to sit here and try to handcuff us is not beneficial for our district or our children. Thank you.
Could I just make one comment? Just one comment. just so you know. I mean, I did not vote for the contract, just so you know.
The extension? The contract extension?
I did not vote for the contract. I was on the board when the contract
I
was
said the
voted.
extension from a year or two ago. That's what I said, the extension, not the original contract.
I voted no for the extension.
Okay, I apologize.
She voted no. I will say she voted no to the extension and
Thank
to
you.
the original contract. She was the only one.
Oh, I know she was against the original because she was actually, that was her first meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, that's correct.
And I know you actually asked for it to be tabled.
That's correct.
So,
Only if they would have listened.
I agree.
Mr. Ding, just going forward, it might be more beneficial for you to get answers if some of those things you just email to Mike so he can prepare and because obviously he doesn't have everything on him, so.
Oh, no, I understand. Some of the information I wanted to actually get out publicly so that other people would hear some of these numbers and realize some of the information that's actually in there. That's why I didn't want it hidden within an email where there's just some email correspondence and nobody's aware of this.
Right. Understandable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm going to give you easy stuff. I'm sorry, I can't do computer work, and my 2-year-old grandson is about to surpass me on his skills. But I'm still stuck on the meaning of the simple word parent. And with your help and 1 minute's worth of guidance, could you get me to some administrator who can give me a short definition of that word, sufficient for the typical person who's enrolling a student here in Easton or in a charter school? And there's more to my question than just that. I'm not looking for the federal definition or the federal regs. I had a tax attorney walk me through that and tell me how stupid I was, that I was a slow learner. I just want the short course on the word parent. Because the simple things like Mr. Simonetta has to deal with, the bill for a charter school goes to the school district of the parent. And unless we know who the parent is, we got some problems. And the parent isn't the parent, and there's about 20 different definitions. I just want the one definition that works. But a longer question, common sense. The losing side of a court case is unlikely to give you a fair and balanced analysis of the loss. And I wouldn't trust the Department of Education to give you a fair and balanced analysis of anything. So they send you an analysis of the Slippery Rock case, which tells you how small it is. And I read it, and I tell you how wise and broad it is, that in Slippery Rock, it basically, to my language, I'm sorry, I was an engineer. I never learned how to read English. It talks about that the people who enroll in a charter school should not be entitled to something broader than that which they get by enrolling in the local public school. Which, if you read it, makes a lot of sense. And they specifically addressed you can't get into kindergarten at 4 and have Mr. Simonetta pay for it. You also know you can't get into first grade at 5 and have Mr. Simonetta pay for it. But PDE forgot to tell you that. And there's a few other minor things in there. But let's stop at kindergarten. While you're worried about your budget, you need to be very careful to firmly, properly, through the services of your solicitor, close the door on those people who would want to drain your honeypot and or give you a case of cancer that you're not able to cure. And one of the things I noted was that they propose all-day kindergarten. Now, I understand all-day kindergarten. And I understand the tremendous costs of particularly a female in the workforce and trying to provide daycare on a private basis. I can work those numbers backwards and tell you how much money my daughter has to earn to pay for what she needs to do. You can go to Harvard for less. But you don't provide all-day kindergarten. You can't afford it. And I think it's reprehensible to let people think that they can get all-day kindergarten through the side door, that which they cannot get here. The Supreme Court has basically said no. Now, somebody's going to say to me, well, Drew, that's not exactly what they said. And I said, well, then you need to be prepared to fight it all the way up to the appropriate level, because you need to take care of what's being here. And if somebody says, well, we'll give them half the money and they can provide the whole. No, that's not what it says. You shouldn't be able to go to a charter school and get more through the side door than you can get right here. You've got enough problems presenting the appropriate things here. Every private interest group around can come up with a set of reasons why they can do it better. That's fine. And I don't fault them for that. But I fault them for thinking that they have a right to drain your limited pot to do it. And if they want to go back 50 years in civil rights and provide separate and unequal benefits for their particular cause, so be it. But on their budget, not your budget. I don't necessarily agree with your budget, but I do think it's your budget for what you need to do and not to be divvied out to somebody else. And I really resent some of the games that are being played that, unfortunately, you're not able to stop. You need to step up and start mashing a few heads. And the best way is to not let them on the ball field. So if there's an appropriate legal reason to keep the door closed, please do everything possible to close that legal door. Thank you very much for listening,
Right
sir.
on cue. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. He got the timing down bad there.
Hi, my name is Rachel Hogan-Carr. I am an Easton Area School District graduate. Yes, absolutely. And I have two daughters who are at Marsh School and are having a really great year there with two superior teachers. And they have a teacher in that school who was my kindergarten teacher. And I've dedicated my professional career to making Easton a great place to live. So I stand behind you with the difficult situations you have to face. And I'll follow his remarks with something else about the charter school. That as soon as the difficult situation with this budget came out, the first thing that happened for parents is they went for alternatives. If my child's not going to have the opportunities that I had to be in theater and drama and music lessons, if these things are starting to be coming away, parents start to panic and they start to look for options. And so support of these programs will prevent the community support for charter schools that has really hurt Philadelphia so tremendously. If you look at what's happened to Philadelphia schools, the increase in charter schools there, they're on rank at this point by 2017 to have 40% enrollment for charter schools. I do not want that for our community. So as you consider whether or not it's worth a few extra percentage points now, think on the long term, what is it going to do for when it's time for people to start looking for alternatives? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Is there one last person who would like to speak for public comment? Seeing no one.
I guess, my name is Meg Sayago. I live on College Hill. I guess I'm one of those parents who are starting to panic. I bought a house in Easton about 10 years ago and was so excited to have the opportunity to send my kids to a neighborhood elementary school, the same school that my father went to. And so excited to send my kids to Easton High School where they can pursue any interest at all, whether it's academic, artistic, athletic. The same high school where my grandmother graduated from in 1937 and where my mom spent her career as a high school English teacher. And I now find myself in what seems like this surreal position of having to actually consider those other options, which I have just no interest in. You know, sending my kids to March Elementary is what I want to do. And, you know, for my husband and I, this issue of class sizes is really a line in the sand. We are both educators and we understand what it is like in a classroom when you have that many children. I work in a school where our cap is 25 students, and I know the challenge of 25 students. And when I think of any more than that, on top of all of these other cuts, you know, we start to think about those other alternatives, whether it's, you know, private, charter, or, you know, moving out of the district. And every single one of those alternatives is unattractive. I have no interest in any one of them. And the idea that I could spend just a little bit more money each year to have that opportunity to send my kids to the school I want them to go to and get the education that I know they can get there is really important to me. And so, you know, I will email you as well so I can be one of those numbers of the, you know, the hundreds who feel this way and the hundreds who feel that way. But I just did want to stand up and be one of the people here today to say that I'm okay with my taxes going up more than, you know, the 2.7% that is possible, because I think the benefits just far outweigh any use that I might have for that extra, $100 in a given year. Thank you.
Thank you. For public comment? All right, seeing none, we are about to adjourn and go right into our committee meeting. Before we do, for the board, it seems during this charter school presentation and somewhere along the line, the charter school and a lot of members of the community were unaware that we have a STEM program, a program that Mr. Cuck and Mr. Cash, secured grant money for and started really getting this thing going. So we have actually a wonderful program. So what I have for the board, I didn't print enough out. We're saving money, paper-wise, but it will be online, and we do have a copy for the press to take. Basically what it is it outlines our entire STEM program. It also shows the Strong Foundation Charter, their 5 pillars, and our pillars, which we do offer. So we're going to hand it out to the board, and we have 2 for the press and for parents who, if you weren't aware that we had the STEM or you're curious about it, you can go online within the next 48 hours and pending that the weather is okay and people are here to work, you can go on and you can look and you'll be able to see what we offer as far as STEM. With that being said, I'd like to take a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry?
Yes, it will be, yes. In fact, it'll be available on the website. I don't even know if you'll have to go through board docs to get it. We'll make it easier to get.
It should be right there. You'll be able to see a link.
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Opposed.